In this video, I want to talk about some of the menu items here and the fact that we're now going to change from using the camera in full automatic mode, which you can see is set there where it says auto in the left side of the screen. And we're going to start using the controls the way they should be used in a manual mode. Now the manual mode includes, exposure, focus, and white balance primarily. So first we're going to go through some of the menu items here and see how to get the camera set up into the manual mode. If you look at the far upper left corner, you'll see the little house there. Looks like a little building, home, with a camera next to it. If you press on that, you're going to end up with a menu that looks like this. The shooting mode is in auto right now. So in order to get it to manual, if you push on the auto, you'll see that you end up with some menus on the left-hand side, auto, and then the next one is cinema, this one is scene, and the one that we want is P for programmed AE. So you're going to set your camera to programmed AE and hit OK. And you're going to end up with, after I press through that, you're going to end up with a P there instead of the auto. And you can also see that while I'm recording this, the audio is registering down below there, although I'm recording on a different camera right now. But anyway, so now we're going to go through a couple menu items here and look at what we have. We press the home key again. The first one to go over to is the recording setup. And this is where you set up what memory you're going to record on. These cameras do have built-in memory, but you all have SD cards. And so what I want to do, or what you want to do, is set up recording media, and you want record media for movies. And you can select between memory card and SD. Right now it's set for SD card, which would be an external card like yours. If I switched it over here to built-in memory, that would go into the camera. But normally you want to be on SD. Now sometimes students make a mistake and the camera is set for memory card and they think, oh, it didn't record anything, and in fact when you look back and see that the camera had been set by someone else for internal memory, their video is on the internal memory and not on their SD card. But you really want to be sure you're on SD. Once you get that, hit the return key here, return again, and return again. And now we're back to the recording setup. Now if I go over here to the tools icon and push on that one, now you're going to see some icons at the top of the screen. You got the camera, you got some little icon there that looks like lines or whatever it is, and then you got the wrench. So if we go through some of these icons here, self-timer, we know what that is, that should be off. Zoom speed. You scroll up to zoom speed, click on that, and what you have then is you've got variable speed, which means the more you press the zoom control, the faster it goes. If I wanted to set a constant speed for a zoom, I could push speed 1, speed 2, speed 3, and those are constant speeds. However far I push the button and hold it, it's going to go at that speed. So variable is a lot of times where we want it, but if you want a nice slow zoom and you don't want to be scared about pushing the button too far and changing speed, you can change one of those speeds and hold it at a constant speed. You come back out of that, and normally we want focus assistance to be off, so you want to check your, that's off. We don't really need that. Face detection and tracking, again, we don't want that. We're not doing photography here. Auto backlight correction, we're going to take that off because we don't really need to see that. Auto slow shutter can go off. Flicker reduction, we don't want that on. Image stabilizer, if you click on that one, you're going to see that you have dynamic, standard, and off. If you're on a tripod, normally you would want this off. The only time that you should use the image stabilizer would be if you're, say, doing a car shot driving, or if you're running, or if you're going up and down steps or something. You could either select standard or dynamic. Select either standard or dynamic. But normally it's in the off position. Go back to the return here and come up here. Video snapshot length, we don't care about, we're not doing anything. Go to the middle icon, and now you have some other things here that you can look at. on-screen markers. If you click that on, what that does is it'll put on some, it can put on the grid, so if you're looking for rule of thirds or composition, it can put on a grid like that. If I go back out here, and if I go to the X here, and you'll see that the grid is there. So you can actually use that to set up shots for composition if you wanted to. Normally I don't have that on, but it is an option. Go back over here there, and you can also turn on levels, white or gray, and normally it's off. Go back out here. Output screen displays, don't have to worry about that. You've got your LCD brightness, which you can turn up, your LCD backlight. Normally these things aren't adjusted. We're not going to mirror anything. And the HDMI status, which again is nothing that we have to worry about. Now we go over here to the wrench. Language, time zone, date and time you don't worry about. Available space and memory. If you wanted to know how much space you had on your memory card or in your internal memory, you could click on that and you could see how many megabytes or gigabytes you have. You know, the SD, there's nothing in there right now. If I go to my available space on my internal memory, I can see that I have 26.8 gigabytes available because there's really nothing recorded on the internal memory here. That's a way to check, you know, your memory if you want to. This is a common mistake that students make, is they plug their headphones in and all they hear is buzzing, and that's because someone had set this to AV out, which means you're trying to send it to a monitor to listen to it or to speakers. And so your headphones, all it hears is just buzzing because it's listening to the video. So you want to make sure you're in headphones if you're using headphones. If you want to hear the speaker in the camera rather than headphones, you have to be on the AV, and then you can hear the little speaker on the camera. But headphones is where you want to be normally. Of course, you've got your headphone volume here that you can turn up and down. You know, usually maximum is good. Notification sounds we don't need. Custom control button, battery info, display units, file numbering. None of that is really necessary. Power on, nope. Here's one that we've used before that you need to learn about. This is initialize. If you're starting with a fresh card or you want to totally erase all of your scenes on this card, you could go to your memory, which if you had a memory card in here, this would be lit up. Instead, this one only has built-in memory. So if I went to built-in memory here, it tells me how much space is available. Used space is only 4.24 gigabytes. But if I wanted to initialize it, and I'll do that just to show you, you hit the initialize. Do I want to complete initialization? And remember, there's a warning there. It'll erase all files. And if I push yes, it's going to do a built-in memory initialization, and when it's all done, the internal memory is wiped clean and I'm fresh to start again. Now I highly recommend that you never erase your card until a project is totally finished and is turned in. Okay? So that's your basic menu items that you need to get familiar with. And now we need to look at the manual controls. So if we go to the little icon on the far right-hand corner, right above where the microphone is, the little guy with a microphone, there's a little icon there, and push that, you're going to end up with another set of menu items. You can see that it says video snapshot, which is off. We don't need that. The audio scene, normally it's just set for, you know, microphone. If you push on that, you'll see that there's some for music and, you know, some other things down there which we really don't care about. We can go to standard here if you wanted to. Standard is for most situations, like it says, so we'll just leave it at standard for now. Go back out, go to that little icon on the right again. If you look down, and we can scroll down here to the ones that we really want to get to here. Powered IS, that is your image stabilization. Normally, like I said, if you're in a tripod situation, you want that off. If you're going to go walking or something, you may want that on, and you see the little yellow hand comes up there showing that there's some stabilization turned on. But normally you want that off if you're on a tripod. And really, you should try to get as good handheld as you can without having to use the Powered IS. Powered IS is okay, except that it creates some other little issues in the video that If you can keep it off, try to keep it off and get your handheld work really good. Go back to here, scroll back up there, focus. Now we want to get into manual focus versus autofocus. You can see the MF at the bottom there. There's a little light there that if I touch it, it turns on, which means the camera is now in manual focus, and you have two icons up here. If I open this lens, and I don't know what you're going to see here, but because I'm sitting here, I'm going to open this up, and you kind of just see the window, through there. If I push on the top icon, you'll see that it changes to infinity, which means it's focused all the way out. If I push the one below it, you can see that it starts to change, and you see it starts going out of focus. Okay, so you can focus here. Now, one of the tricks that I use with these cameras, because they are kind of sensitive on the manual focus, is if you're using manual focus and you want to focus it, put it in auto first. Let the camera focus itself, and then push the manual focus. And then if you have to touch it up a little bit, you can use the two controls. But now you've got the camera focused, basically. And so once you push the manual focus, it means it will not go out of focus at that point. Now, really, the proper way to focus a camera is you can put it in auto if you want to, and you want to zoom all the way in on what you want to focus on. So if I want to zoom all the way in there, I would focus on that, let the camera focus. It's not steady because I'm not on a tripod here, but I'll focus the best I can, and then push the manual focus. Now that means that when I zoom out, it's going to be in focus. But if I were to zoom in, if I had a tripod and zoomed in and wanted it to stay in focus, when I zoom in, it's going to be in focus rather than out of focus. And it's the best it can be because, again, I'm not on a tripod, so I can't really get it there. But you can see that it will stay in focus as you zoom in if you focus all the way in tight. So the proper way to focus a camera is to zoom in all the way as far as it'll go, focus it, and then set up your shot. So that if you want to do a zoom in, you can do it, and it won't come out of focus. If you do it in autofocus, the more as you zoom in, it'll keep trying to refocus, and you see it trying to shift focus all the time. So that's your manual focus. Come back out, go to the icon down here. We're going to go back up here, and now we look at exposure. Again, we're in auto exposure right now, and if I push the M, the red dot comes on, and you see a scale at the bottom, and it defaults at 0, and now you have two arrows on the left and right, up and down. If I want to decrease my exposure, which means I want less light, I want it darker, I push this one on the left side, and as it goes down to -3, it gets darker. If I need to go up in exposure, and I push the right hand one, and you keep going up further, if I can push the button here, make it go, that would be a good thing. And I can't, for some reason, push the button. I'm not sure why, but anyway, I guess that's as far as it's going to go up, in that exposure. Again, if I set my camera to auto and let it set itself up and then push the manual, now the exposure will not, change as I zoom in and zoom out, depending on the light. So really, that's the way that you can hold your exposure correct in a scene too, is let the camera set it up. If you think it's right, then put it to manual and hold it. If you have to move it a little bit, you can either take it down some more, or if you have to go up some, you can go up some from there, and then it'll stay there. So that's your manual focus. Come back out of there, go to the icon again, go up here. We look at white balance. Now, white balance is where the camera has to know what white is in the scene, or the colors will be off. So the way that you white balance is you use a piece of white paper or something and zoom in all the way to it. And I only have this board out there that I'm going to use, here, but it's not the best, but I'm going to zoom into it just to demonstrate here. Let's just say that that's my piece of white paper. Now, it has auto white balance, which means, it's automatically setting it up, but there's a couple of presets. Here's a preset for if I was outside. That might be a good enough preset for outdoors in the sunlight. If I was outside, that might be right. Who knows? If I was indoors under regular house light, I could go to the tungsten bulb one, and that might be right for tungsten bulb. But really, I want to be over here to the manual, which is that one. And you're going to see now the manual looks really bad because it's set for, some other color. And you can see at the top it says custom white balance, and it says set white balance, and the little icon is blinking. So if I push the white balance button, it's going to blink until it's done, and now the camera thinks that that whiteboard is white, and it has set the whiteboard for that color. And now I can come out of that, and if I were to zoom out, ideally it would be about the right color in that room, which as I look here, it's pretty close, from the way it looks. And that's how you would set up your white balance on the camera. So you want to be in manual white balance, use a piece of white paper, zoom in all the way to the white paper, and set the white balance manually, and then zoom out and set your shot. Normally that works. Sometimes it still looks a little bit funny. If you're outside and it still looks wrong, you might have to go to the outdoor one. Or if you're inside, you might have to go to the tungsten one. But normally speaking, the set white balance, manual white balance, will set the camera to the right color. And that's really what you want to do. Okay. So we'll come back out of that, go to the icon again, and scroll up here and see what else there is. Mic level. If you're using external microphones, you have a choice of auto or manual. And right now it's set in auto, so it's picking up my voice just in auto here. And if I go to manual, now I can turn it up and down. I can turn it down to where the meter barely moves, and I can turn it up until I get a normal voice reading. Just keep going up until it's loud enough. And normally you want to peak right around that 12. If you can see the 12 there, the green, that's about where you want your audio to peak. So right now I'd have to turn that down just a little bit so it didn't peak up past that. Now the reason we use the manual microphone mode is because if you're using auto, and if a person is talking or stops talking and there's no sound, the auto is going to come up and try to amplify what it hears, which would be the background noise. If I use manual, it's going to stay there the whole time. It's not going to change. So manual microphone levels is what you want to use when you're using external microphones, or if you're using the camera microphone, which normally we're not going to do when we start into real production. We want to use external microphones, either boom mics or lavaliers for people, so that we get the best sound, because the onboard camera mic is just not the greatest. So go back out to this main screen here again, and if we go back to that icon, I think there's one more thing I want to look at here, the zoom type. Normally you want to be in the 32 times, which is the optical zoom. If you go to 53 times or 1060 times, now you're talking electrical zoom, and that creates other issues in the video because you're not really optically zooming, you're electronically zooming, and electronic zoom is actually just magnifying the pixels. And when you magnify the pixels, you magnify noise, and the resolution goes down. So we really want to stay in the 32x, time. Should you ever use 53 or 1060? Sure, I guess so. If you're at a football game and you want to zoom in all the way to the close-up of the quarterback's eyes, you might have to use the 1060x. It may look really bad, but at least you'll get to see it. So that would be the one, a time, for instance, that you'd want to use it if you had to really zoom into something tight and you were far away and you had no other choice. The last choice would be to use either 53 or 1060 times there, but we want to be in 32x normally. Okay. Let's look at the icon here one more time, see if there's anything else I want to talk to you about that I didn't do already. I think that's it. I think that's all the menu items, and so that's really what you need to learn about now in order to do the next projects, because the next projects are going to be graded on using the manual modes and correct color balance, correct composition, which there's an assignment for, and knowing how to use the camera. if you look at the screen there, you can see up in the upper right hand side there's the battery level indicator. There's still 47 minutes on this. The red icon there shows that there's no SD card in the camera. I'm using MP4 and I'm 60p, which is the resolution and the type of recording that I'm doing. The headphones down at the bottom, right side there shows that I'm in headphone mode. You can see on the left-hand side, you can see that I'm in the programmed AE mode, which is what I need. I have no plus or minus. I'm at plus or minus 0 on my, exposure, and the MF stands for manual focus. It's set for manual focus, and the icon just below that, the little triangle with the dot above it, means that I'm in manual color balance. And so that's the way the camera should normally be set up for anything that you're doing. And it's important that you learn how to use all the exposure and all the manual controls, because all the projects from now on out need to be using manual mode unless there is a good reason for using the auto mode. And sometimes there is a good reason, so that would have to be something we would discuss or talk about if you were going to have to do that. But manual mode, and that should do it. So take the cameras, learn how it's done, and make sure that you're using it properly for the next projects.